John won't show on.
Well, you called me and said, "Hey, I got this band out in Concord. Would you have them on?" And I listened to the CD, and I wasn't quite sure how to classify them. And I still don't know to this day really why I said yes. We were doing music and stuff, but you just got me. It's the best yes I ever said to my life, because now I can't even begin to tell you how much joy I've had watching this band take all these steps up to where they are right now. Scott Davis is in studio with us. We'll talk to Bob Crawford on the phone in just a second. How are you, Scott?
I'm great.
You're
John.
You're doing an art exhibit right now. You got a new album out. You're just slightly busy.
Man, forget about all that stuff.
Well, no,
we're here for John Hancock's retirement.
No.
I am busy, but
yeah. But you're always creating.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah, I am. I
can't remember the quote, and I won't paraphrase it, but you pretty much surmised this. I'm an artist, and you don't classify me as musical or art or I'm an artist, and so that's what motivates you. Does one ever get in the way of the other?
They sure do. They did today. Sure enough, I was listening to a record while I was sketching for a large piece that I'm working on, and I ended up at the piano. And I just had to submit.
And that was the other kind of question I wanted to ask you about songwriting process. What did the lyrics come before the tune, or can it be either or?
I mean, for instance, today I just lifted some lyrics. I just sang my own lyrics over the melody I was hearing from the band I was listening to, and I said, "Well, I'm just going to take those and go upstairs." And there was something.
But it's a discipline because your mind is set to be a songwriter and your mind is set to be an artist. So, I mean, you've kind of disciplined your mind to work that way to the point that things are allowed to come in.
Yeah, it's like a junk man. I just
I don't think I could write a song. And I say that and think, well, sure you could if you practiced, but you guys have done this now for a long, long time. I got a kick out of the Toppin Elton John story where they're hardly ever in the same room. He writes the lyrics.
Yeah.
Elton John writes the music. Is that how you and Seth work at all?
Well, actually, today I sent the idea straight to Seth because I didn't see him. I just sent it to him to see if he would respond to it, if there was a spark there.
And he'll dwell on that for a while, or
maybe I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah,
it's one of the many ways we work, and I don't know that we've ever accepted or acknowledged one way to work, which has been it's a double-edged sword. It's been good for us, but it also has helped keep a slower pace, which has been good for us as well.
Let me go over here and welcome Bob Crawford in here. And if I'm not mistaken with the story, it was Bob Crawford who at some point or another said to Dolph Ramseur, "Well, you ought to see if you can get us on Hancock's show over at WBT." Is that the way it was? Is that the way it came down, Bob?
My memory's not so good, but I think so. I think it could have been. I know that when I moved to Charlotte in '96, I didn't know anybody. And you were pretty much my best friend, even though we didn't know each other, just listening to you every night. And I was a production assistant in the film business there, and I would just find myself driving. Half the time I was lost in Charlotte, and I was just listening to you all the time. So when you did invite us on the show, that was a big deal for me.
If the Avett Brother thing hadn't worked out, what do you think you'd be doing today?
I don't know, John. I don't know. Maybe I'd work at WBT. I'm not sure.
It's kind of a loaded question because I know an awful lot of the talent that Dolph Ramseur has found as he signed artists and stuff. A lot of it originates with you. You seem to have kind of a pipeline to talent.
I just happen to be friends with some of the best songwriters in the history of North Carolina and perhaps the history of the world, being close to Scott and Seth and being close to David Childers. I mean, I think that's about all you need in life are those connections, and you'll have great music forever.
Dolph, David Childers, most underrated musician to come out of this area ever? One of it?
He's one of them for sure.
Yeah,
great talent. And, I think David, he told me about the Avett Brothers. Of course, he said they were from Kannapolis, North Carolina, when he told me about them, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure, David," but found out they were from Concord. So, anyway, but yeah, David's great talent.
But you were you had just come off a tennis career, and you were kind of new to this as well, were you not, when you first met Scott and Seth?
For sure, I'm kind of still new to this in some ways. I tell people all the time I'm not really in the music business. I'm in the Avett Brothers business and the other band, David Childress business. So I don't know. I guess being in Concord in this area, we're just doing our own thing. I
would ask you the same question. If the Avett Brother thing hadn't worked out, do you think you'd still be promoting musicians and bands? Impossible question, isn't it?
Impossible. I mean, I can't really believe that. This whole thing is shocking to me. Probably like you thinking about your career. I mean, 49 years in radio. It's just, how did it happen? And here you are.
Yeah, no, and especially all the attention I've gotten in the last week or so.
You deserve it.
Seems a little bit surreal. Well, that's what they keep telling me. But I was just telling Dave Scott, my old morning show partner that was with me, I grew up listening to Top 40 radio. So those guys, to me, were the epitome. They invented their own characters. I mean, those guys created radio. So I don't think there's anybody on the radio today that even comes close to being compared to the old Top 40 jocks, because they were so creative and so much fun to listen to. So when you start blowing smoke up mine, I kind of think to myself, God, I don't know, like, hold a candle to the people I grew up listening to on the radio.
Well, John, the brothers have done, you'll probably have done, Scott, this 200 times, radio stations around America. And you started really your first with you, and we started at the mountaintop, because you can tell right off the bat, being in here, you were a true pro. In Charlotte's, as you well know, this station in Charlotte, in the media area, I mean, it's just such a great market for, DJ personalities, and this is a big loss.
Do you ever hear a song lyric and think to yourself, I wish I had written that song lyric, or Scott?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Because I listen to radio interviews with you guys and think, I wish I had asked that question, because I've heard some great interviews and some really, and I guess people that really examine and dissect your music and your lyrics maybe more so than I do. It's interesting because I did a quick pass through your new album called Closer Than Together, and you would never pick the song that I thought was great. Though I think the We Americans is the one that gets all the headlines, because it's kind of anti-Avett to some extent. It's not what you expect from the Avetts, and that's a good thing. But Better Here was my favorite song coming out of the album. Now, I've since listened to it and spent more time with it, and so there may be songs I like better than Better Here right now, but that was the one that got my attention when I first went through the album. Scott Avett, Bob Crawford. I'm going to talk to Bob in just a minute about Hallie, his incredible daughter, because that's a big story of the Avett brothers as well, and Dolph Ramseur. But first, we'll head on over to the traffic center and Boomer Von Cannon. All right, I got Dolph Ramseur, some of my favorite people in the studio right now. If we had your mom and dad, Scott, we'd have all of my favorite people in the studio right now. Scott Avett from the Avett Brothers and their new album called Closer Than Together. And if you haven't spent some time with that, go spend some time with that, because it's really, really interesting. And it's an album that you kind of got to let it roll through. And then you got to start going back and listening to it all over again. It's kind of like I remember the first time I ever heard Sgt. Pepper, I hated it. But then after I spent some time with it, then obviously it became a classic. And Bob Crawford is the bass player for the Avett Brothers, and probably the reason I got to know the band in the first place. And Bob, I want you to give me an update on Hallie, because they're giving away a house tonight on WBTV, and they're going to make a $1.7 million for St. Jude's. And I know St. Jude's is near and dear to your heart, and you owe them a huge debt of gratitude because of what they've done for your family.
I could not. We could be here for hours. We're here for you tonight, John. Like just like Scott said, I want to talk about John Hancock, and I just want to let everybody out there know what a good friend that you've been to me and Melanie and Hallie and my son Sam through this whole journey. You're a great man. You've got a tender heart, and I've always just appreciated your friendship and your care and your prayers for my family. Yeah, Hallie's doing great. We were at St. Jude a couple weeks ago. And for your listeners out there, you can never do too much for St. Jude. If you're looking for, of course, we want to support Kids First of the Carolinas, but we want to support St. Jude as well, because our family was a recipient of that charity, and you never know how good a charity is until, they're helping your family out and your daughter. But Hallie's doing great. She's 6.5 years, cancer-free, which is for pediatric brain tumors, is nothing short of a miracle. And so she's on her own path, and we just see changes in her, beautiful, wonderful, joyous changes in her every single day. And John, I just really, personally, as a friend, I appreciate you always asking about her and all the things that you've done to support our family over the years.
I don't think I've ever seen a picture of her where I didn't just see joy poking through. She just seems to be a happy little girl to me. And every time I see a picture of her, I just think, boy, that's just a great success story there.
Well, I'll tell you something, and Scott and Dolph can attest to this. In the earliest, worst days of her journey, of our journey with her, we didn't know what she was gonna, what ability she would have, or if she was going to survive, or what the future was going to look like. And I prayed that she would know joy, that in her life, whatever her life was, she would know joy. And I'll tell you, she's got that. With that prayer came very true. It came every day. It's true. So yeah. I'm going to ask you one of those hokey radio questions.
I know the first time Bob Weir walked on stage, I don't know if that was Red Rocks or not, but the first time you played with Bob Weir, that was like a bucket list moment for you. You guys have had so many moments. If I asked you for one, what would it be?
Well, I mean, for me to answer it, like playing with Bob Weir was up there with being on the John Hancock show. But I'm going to give you a hokier answer. I think, and Scott may agree, and Dolph as well. I think the fact that we're still doing it after 18 years is the greatest thing of all. That we still love each other and we're still a family. And we still get to do that night after night, to walk out on stage and play these amazing songs for just wonderful people. And the fact that we're still doing it almost 20 years in, that for me is the greatest thing of all about it.
You guys are a family. That's a Scott Avett answer. That's the same thing. It is. It's the same thing he said to me at the Kids First bike drive when I saw him last year. He kept on saying to me, "I'm just surprised that we are still out there doing it." And it's the opportunity. To get the opportunity in the first place is one thing, but to be able to sustain it, that's the blessing. And so you guys are on the same page. I guess that doesn't surprise me at all. Bob,
well, actually, John, he texted me a little bit ago and said, if John asks you this question, this is how.
So you guys are working off bullet points, is what that's all about.
Right. Our talkers.
I'm going to let you get off the telephone and quit having to hold that thing up to your ear. Thank you for calling in today. I appreciate it a whole bunch.
God bless you, John Hancock. I love you.
I love you too, man. One of the good guys. And can you guys stick around for about 8 more minutes? Another 8-minute segment? I don't feel like I've even talked to Dolph yet.
Absolutely.
So we'll do that. Scott Avett, and I may ask you about the same question. Sure. I remember I interviewed Seth one time, and I don't know where you guys were heading, but it was some festival, and I said, "Are you excited about playing so-and-so?" And he said, "I don't know, John. We play 175 concerts a year. You don't get really excited about all of them." So learning that and finding out that there really wasn't a damn flower in Manhattan, two of my biggest disappointments at the Avett Brother interviews
it's all
ever.
Lies.
Yeah, metaphors. So Scott Avett and Dolph Ramseur, their manager, and we'll continue this in just a few. We're back with Dolph Ramseur and Scott Avett. Dolph, let's talk about your stable for a couple of seconds because you've signed some pretty interesting people. So talk to me about some of the new acts that you have signed, like